So, the story that a lot of people are asking my input on is the husband and wife couple from St. Louis, Missouri. Both of them are attorneys. A lot of people have heard this story. They, during some protesters broke into their private development, and they subsequently broke out their firearms. The husband had what looked like an AR-15. The wife had a pistol, and pointed those weapons at the protesters that had broke into their private development. So a quick recap of the story. Mark and Patricia, I believe, McCloskey, two attorneys that live in this $1.something million mansion in this private development. And during some protests, and this is something that very few people know, protesters, and they're in this development, apparently that to enter into this development on foot, there's an iron gate, and the photo of the gate being smashed and completely destroyed is all over the internet. So these protesters, this mob of protesters, broke through this gate. That's confirmed. There's, obviously video surveillance in a place like that, and a mangled gate. And they were marching actually toward the mayor's home. So the mayor of St. Louis apparently lives in this private development. Now, of course, there are signs that say private property, and there are signs that say no trespassing. That's also been confirmed by people who live there and the authorities. So that's not a question, okay? So there's no trespassing signs, private property signs, and they bust through this gate, and they're going to the mayor's house. The mayor, her name is Lyda Crewson, Democratic mayor Lyda Crewson, white woman. They were going to her house to protest at her home because apparently she went on Facebook Live and called out, or actually just spoke the names of all these people who were calling for defunding the police. So she kind of put them on blast on Facebook Live and said, hey, by the way, these people, these are their names that are looking to defund the police. So apparently after she did that, the protesters who were seeking to defund the police, among other things, decided they were going to break into that neighborhood and go protest at her home and do God knows what. We don't know. So in the process of that, they broke through this iron gate, and they were approaching the home of these two lawyers, Mark and Patricia McCloskey. And the lawyers saw this. They saw this angry mob approaching their property. I don't know. It's, questionable right now. Were they actually on their front lawn? Were they near the sidewalk of their front lawn? Some of these private developments, it's kind of weird how the property goes, but they were essentially at their home. And they pulled out their weapons and pointed it at the protesters and told them pretty much, stay away and, get out of here. So they're now being charged with a felony, which is unlawful use of a firearm. I guess the charges are saying they unlawfully pointed the weapons at the protesters, and they put the protesters in fear of their safety. Okay. Let's back up a step. Missouri has something called the Castle Doctrine. Once again, something people don't know. So a lot of people who reached out to me and they were asking, hey, as a police officer, what do you think about this? Is this right? Is it wrong? Should they be charged? Should they not be charged? Okay. We're going to get to charges in a second. But people were saying, what's this is illegal. Well, no, there's something questionable. There's something called the Castle Doctrine. And the Castle Doctrine is essentially the law on the books for Missouri that says you can And by the way, if you're from Missouri, let me know. Let me know where you're checking in from. I always like to know where you're watching from, what city, what state, what country. So let me know where you're tuning in from. I'd love to know. And so the Castle Doctrine allows you to protect private property with deadly force, even if need be. Okay. And apparently, if someone comes onto your property and if someone is threatening harm in some way or some shape, you can use deadly force against them to, it says, protect private property, which typically in some states it's you can use deadly force if your life is in imminent danger. So that is how it is in some states. This is just Missouri. Just if someone's on your property, private property, and they are coming at you, or you feel they're about to come at you, or then you're allowed to use deadly force. So it's the Castle Doctrine. I invite everyone to look it up and read it. There's a lot of information about it online, so you could read the Castle Doctrine. There's a whole lot of legal websites that break down the Castle Doctrine. So a lot of people ask me, is that kind of like stand your ground? Yes and no, and you'll see the differences. When you look up stand your ground and you look up Castle Doctrine, you'll see the differences. So Missouri has that in place. So there's a lot of people who are supporting Mark and Patricia McCloskey, saying, hey, we got the Castle Doctrine, okay? That means they have the right to defend their property. These people were approaching their property. They broke into a private community through a iron gate, no trespassing signs, private property signs, and what's the deal here? What were they supposed to do? Were they supposed to wait until these people potentially kicked in their front door and then point the weapons at them and tell them to go away? Because then at that point, maybe you're shooting someone. So a lot of people who are supporting the McCloskeys are saying they did the right thing. They didn't shoot anyone, but they followed the law of the Castle Doctrine, which allowed them to protect their private property. On the other side, people are saying Mrs. McCloskey had her finger on the trigger. She could have accidentally discharged a round. It could have killed a protester. And they're 100% right. That was very, very reckless on her part for having that finger on the trigger, pointing it directly at people. Highly dangerous, and definitely could have killed someone who was just maybe, angry mob with the group and on her property or at her property line. So I understand both sides of the equation, and there's probably, a lot of legal aspects on both sides that a lot of people have to look at. The one thing I don't understand is you broke through an iron gate. There's no trespassing signs and private property signs, and you break through an iron gate in an attempt to go to the mayor's home to do what? Who knows? Protest. Not a single person was charged with trespassing. Not a single person was charged with trespassing. The only people being charged are the McCloskeys. I kind of feel like if you're going to charge them with the felony of pointing the weapon at these protesters that broke into their private community, then you should also charge the protesters who broke into the private community. They were breaking the law as well. So that's my take for people who are asking, what do you think? I said, well, what's fair is fair. There's a lot of people who are saying these charges are not going to stick because of the Castle Doctrine. There's a lot of people who are saying this is a political move, and it's just, for a political show, a political game, charging them with this felony. It's never going to stick. Their attorney is stating that the attorney for the McCloskeys, who were attorneys themselves, but I believe they're personal injury attorneys. So their attorney is saying this is completely bogus. And, the Castle Doctrine, among other things, allows them to do what they did. So the greater question here that people are asking is, is this a violation of your Second Amendment, where you are able to bear arms, but if you feel threatened by people approaching your home, you cannot point a weapon at them and tell them, hey, get back, stay back, or else I'm going to shoot you. How does that work? So that's that fine line, right? At what point do you say these people are going to hurt me? Well, you don't know. Like, what do you say? You don't know they were going to hurt you until they hurt you. You don't know, right? You have no idea. And in a split second, a mob of people can charge you and overtake you and hurt you, enter your home. You don't know. So yeah, there has to be that middle ground. And as we all know, the police aren't always going to be there to show up immediately. Sometimes the police can take 3, 4, 5, 7 minutes to get there, and God knows what can happen in that time. So for those of you who are asking, do I think it's fair that they were charged with this felony? In looking at the Castle Doctrine and reading through it on the legal websites like I suggest you do, but I don't know if the pointing the weapons at these people, if they were not really on their property. I don't know if they were just kind of marching by in the street and they pointed the weapon saying, hey, don't come on this property. Just keep on walking. Don't come on this property. I don't know. That's kind of still like up in the air. I can say this. If they were moving toward the property, if I'm looking out the window and I see a group of protesters coming onto my lawn, approaching my door, at that point, I think it's pretty sensible to now open my door or open my window and then maybe let them know I have a weapon and say, hey, get back, get off my property, or else I'm calling the police and I will shoot you. I have the right to defend my property here. Not that you would state the Castle Doctrine in that moment, but I have the right to defend my property. Get back, or I'm going to use this firearm. That's what's in the hanging in the mix there. And the reality is, most people who know firearms rules, if you would, never point a weapon at something or someone that you don't intend on shooting or killing. And if you have your weapon on target, yes, your finger should be on the trigger if you're ready to shoot. But this woman, I don't know her level of firearms training. She was kind of one-handed pointing the gun at people, and she definitely could have, it's scary, very scary. She definitely could have squeezed off around and just killed someone who was, looking to get to the mayor's house. So, definitely wrong on her part for that, as far as a firearm safety standpoint. Do I think these charges are going to stick? Absolutely not. I do not. I think that this is just really for the news and for the media, and I don't think these charges are going to stick. But I think that this is a wake-up call for homeowners and a wake-up call for protesters, because you have to now realize that if you go into a private development, private property, no trespassing signs, and you have the intention to do, who knows, something not good, well, just trespassing alone, there's going to be consequences. There has to be rule of law, right? You can't just go somewhere where there's no trespassing private property signs and say, well, we don't care. We're protesting. We're angry. And we want to go to the mayor's house and yell at her for calling people out on Facebook. So you can't break the law. You can't do that. On the flip side, homeowners have to be mindful that you got to be very careful of that line with these protesters where, if they're in the street, yeah, okay. But, if they come onto your property, I think it's kind of like, game on. But if they're in the street, they're not really approaching your property, they're in the area, it's a scary thing, because everyone knows in a split second that can change. So interesting case. A lot of the 2A Second Amendment people are very upset because they're like, this is crazy. They were just exercising their Second Amendment rights. They were covered under the Castle Doctrine, and some of these people, they're not wrong from that standpoint, but we'll see how it plays out. As a police officer, if I was on the job and I had to respond to this call, it would be kind of hairy, because you'd have to say, all right, were they an imminent threat? Were they, actively damaging your property? Were they about to enter into your property? These are a lot of questions you have to ask during your investigation to kind of really paint the picture of what really happened there. The trespassing appears to be cut and dry. Hey, whether people say, oh, the gate was open or whatever, that's neither here nor there. I mean, it's clearly, from looking at these photos, it's clear as day. This is a private community, a private development, a highly prestigious community with all these mansions. Everyone in that mob of people going in there to head toward the mayor's home knew they were trespassing and this was private property. So that's no one can try to counter that. You say, oh, the gate was open or what? Okay, so now if the gate was open, it's okay. So now if you walk by a house, someone's private residence, and the door is open, does that mean, okay, well, now it's no longer private property. The door's open. I could just walk in, right? And I could be fine. No. So the people who are, saying, well, the gate was open, they didn't break the gate down. The gate was broken on the way out. I've heard that story too. The gate broke on the way out. First of all, who breaks a gate on the way out, right? But let's say the gate was broken on the way out. Just because the gate was open on the way in doesn't mean you go in, people. It doesn't mean you go in. It's still private property. There's still no trespassing signs. Doesn't mean you go in. There doesn't need to be a gate there. There doesn't need to be a fence there. As many of you know, even if you approach a property line and there's a sign on a telephone pole that says, no trespassing, don't go beyond this point, this is a property line, no trespassing. You walk past that sign, no gate, no door, no nothing, you're trespassing. We all know this, right? That's elementary. So I'd like to see if that actually happens. Probably not going to happen with those people being charged with the trespassing, which was probably a misdemeanor or like a petty disorderly person's offense. But right is right, wrong is wrong. So but I don't think they'll be charged either. So interesting case. I know a lot of the 2A people are going to be keeping a close eye on this as well as some people on the other side. So we'll see. Hopefully this doesn't turn into a political mess, which a lot of things are turning into these days. But hopefully for these people, that it doesn't turn into too much of a nightmare, because you can understand when they saw that, why they were scared and their fear. Totally. I mean, I think anyone with a family and children, if they saw a mob of people in their private development that they probably pay a lot of money for to live in, and to have that no trespassing and keep outsiders out, I can imagine anyone with a family and children and people they love seeing that mob of people come in that apparently just broke in. You would get scared. You don't know what their intentions are. We've seen people killed in these riots, right? We've seen people assaulted and beaten in these riots. Not saying that that's what this group of people were doing or that was what their intention was, but we've seen it happen. So yeah, as a parent, as a homeowner, as a spouse, yeah, I could see why they got scared and they did what they did. And you can't say you don't understand that. Anyone with a family can understand that, of course. So we'll see what happens, but stay tuned. I'm probably going to do a blog on this on 221btactical.com, so check that out. And we also have a couple of training points along this line coming up in our Sheepdog Nexus, which is our private training forum. So stay tuned for that as well. A lot of people are asking about training regards to protecting your property during these crazy times. So I'm going to do a special block just on that. So you got to remember, listen, if you're going to protest, if you're going to go out there and yell and scream for your cause, I don't think people have a problem with that. I think people have a problem when you start breaking the law. When you start breaking the law, you start trespassing, you start damaging property, you start looting, and you start committing crime along with your protesting. That's what people have a problem with. So if you're going to protest, hold your signs, march, yell, scream, chant, do whatever you want. But just know that if you cross that line where you're obstructing traffic, obstructing passage of regular citizens trying to get to work, damaging property, any of that stuff, trespassing on private property, you're in the wrong. And the local officials should absolutely prosecute that. And I think that's the only way you're going to curb these peaceful protests from getting out of hand and turning into non-peaceful protests. So let's keep that in mind. And this has all got to end. This is just madness. We have people out there protesting. They don't even know what they're out there for. So this is something that's got to end. So keep a good head on your shoulders. Be safe. Use your head. And remember, always keep your head up. Keep your head on a swivel, because there's some crazy things going on right there. And remember, most importantly, it's back. It's back. Corona, COVID-19. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Don't touch your mucous membranes, right? Wear your mask and, all that stuff for the people who are mask wearers, and the people who don't want to wear a mask, do whatever you want. We'll see you next time.